This is Leo Lewis at Strive Bookstore in downtown Minneapolis, and we are here again with one of my guests, Steve Davis, who's a former U of M football player, and certainly having the time to come and talk a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Steve, I think one of the things that you and I have in common is that we were at the U at the same time. I was in the athletic department at the same time you were a student athlete, and we both have that whole notion of highly profile sports and what it could do to a person. But one of the things I'd like for you to talk about is how you came to the point where you are now being a transition expert for young people. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we saw each other at the U of M, and when I came here, my hopes and dreams were, like many young athletes, to make it to the NFL and live a prosperous life. I felt like I had a really good career, and when that opportunity presented itself, things shifted. That window of opportunity to make it to the NFL closed real quick, and I wasn't prepared for it because my identity was wrapped into being that person.
Right.
Now, I did get my degree, and I did have opportunities to get jobs, but I was lost.
Yeah.
And being lost gave me a new sense of foundation to kind of think about who am I and what am I outside of sports. But that was a struggle. It took years for me, honestly. It took years for me to figure out pieces of what I care about, what my passions were. And it really didn't open up for me until I talked to a former alum.
Okay.
And we just had a conversation about life and what life is, family, structure, everything outside of just looking for a job. And he opened up my eyes because he gave me a job. He gave me my first job, picked me up out of a deep mental state in trying to figure out who I am. And that to me was like an eye opener of how I can start leaning more into community and building relationships, put myself out there, and try to discover who I am along the journey.
Yeah.
But during that process, I found a lot of athletes were going through the same thing.
Well, it seems like every athlete goes through that. It just depends on who goes through it earlier than others. I mean, you've experienced the fact that even some of your colleagues or former teammates who have gone to the NFL and are out now.
Yep.
I mean, they're going through transition as well.
Yep.
But what do you think contributed you to think so narrowly during your college career about sports, and then to block out some of those other necessary advantages that you could have as a college student?
Yeah. I mean, you are in a very structured regimen. Every day you're focusing on football. You're going to class and you're trying to get your degree, but the priority is football. And if you're not doing all your obligations for football, all the other stuff is not going to be there for you. So when you have that in front of you every day, you get wrapped into that identity. This is the main thing that's driving me. This is the main thing why I'm here. This is the main thing why people care about what I'm doing, why they're cheering me on. So I have to make it. And every player that plays a sport has in their mind that they want to go professional. It starts young and it continues to develop. So when you have that mentality, it's hard to think about everything else because it's a plan B, and you're thinking that plan B is going to see itself way down the line.
Yeah. I mean, eventually you'll be in a plan B,
right,
is what we're saying. And it's interesting, though, with the odds of making it so minimal, you still are wrapped up into this identity of, yes, I could still see myself going to the next level.
Yep.
Okay. Despite the fact that, there's a lot of competition at that next level. Tell me a little bit about how it's going since then. I mean, I understand that you've developed into a life coach now and a published author. I want to make sure everyone knows that Steve published the book Soul of an Athlete, and it really kind of follows your life, but then also gives a number of anecdotes and teachings about exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, so the idea of helping others started when I was going through my own transition. But as most folks in 2020, it felt like people were soul searching, looking for purpose.
Yeah.
Me, it just kind of continued to speak to me that I need to step out and do a little bit more in this space
Okay.
and be a helpful resource, because that's who I'm trying to be in life in general, is just help folks.
Right.
But I just know like athletes are continuing to go through this issue because there's not a lot of support that's A, preparing them, and then B, when they're done, helping them in that process. So I created my company Strive Higher After Sports as an opportunity to really help them in that transitional period and really think from a foundational standpoint. Like, you can easily go from point A to point B and say like, hey, I'm done with, my sport and I need to find a career. But if you find that career, you go further down the line, you still may feel like something is missing in you. Like you might have a piece of you that's like, this is not like, I'm not feeling like me. So I focus more on like the foundational steps of, let's get back into understanding who you are, what your identity is, what are the things you care about, your passions, your joy, your relationships, and let's foster those a little bit more. Let's build a foundation so that you can continue to move forward in a way that's going to be fulfillment versus just finding one thing that's your next destination. I'm not seeking destinations anymore and looking at the scoreboard. We're looking at the pathways for you to find your joy and your fulfillment.
So we're really talking about young adults at this stage. Are we talking about primarily college students who are transitioning out of college and they're finding their careers have ended? Is that your primary constituency?
I would say, I work specifically with college athletes, but I also work with pro athletes. And I was telling people earlier this year, like, I'm navigating to talk to high school and middle school athletes just because the issue of attachment to that identity as an athlete starts early.
Right.
And getting somebody to come and tell the story like I was that same person and let me help you prepare while you have all these people and resources around you to get you to start thinking about your other passions and starting to develop a little bit more about who you are, why you still have this around you, so that when you're done, you at least have an idea of things that you care about and that you like, and you can go explore even further. Because it's hard. Even if you are a pro athlete, you play a long time, like, you're further away from like normal society.
Correct.
And you have been in this high esteem, you have this ego where everybody cares about you because you played a sport. And you have all this money, but you don't really know what to do with it once you're done, and you don't know who you are outside of just, I am that sports figure that everybody looked up to. So it takes a lot to really kind of give that opportunity to think about like all these different aspects of who you are, and it takes time, but also you still need that structure and that coaching to support that. You've had a coach your whole life, and when you go out into the real world, you're having the autonomy by yourself for the first time, and it's like, I don't know what to do with that. So that's where I'm trying to help people in that space, knowing that you still need that support, and getting that support from somebody who's been through it is more likely for you to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to this person because he understands truly what I'm going through.
Correct. And people that aren't in sports go through career transition issues as well. I mean, and they need assistance, they need coaching, and you're just being a little bit more specific to the ideal person, which is a former athlete. Who is willing to go through this process of transitioning and finding who they are. And I think, I've, certainly delved into the literature and career transition, and it really kind of begs us to talk about, when did this start? I think as athletes, we start at the age of 5 understanding who we are. And we get accolades for our athletic prowess, and it builds and builds, and we have a support system such as parents who help push us into these areas as well, because we do well. So what do you think is a good approach for a high school student athlete coming to college? Are you able to provide that scenario and assistance as well?
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was that kid. I even write about it in my story about like how it started at an early age, that this attachment to this identity of being an athlete, and like this is what everybody's cheering me on for, and what I feel like is my purpose. It started early, and I was like, I'm riding this train until the wheels fall off, right? And for high school athletes who are have aspirations to make it to the college level or even pro level, and with NIL that's in the middle of this now, where they can actually start making money for themselves, like there's a lot of ego that gets attached to it. And my approach to it, I use a life design, designing your life framework.
Okay.
So life design gives you an opportunity to explore all the different aspects in your interests, your love, your joy, why you still have an abundance of resources. But it also has this bias towards action where you go out and try things and explore the things that you think that you like, so that you can truly know, like, okay, how did I respond to that? And let me collect the data on myself to say, like, okay, this is something that I did, and I did like an aspect of this, and then a certain aspect I didn't like. So you won't have to waste time when you get done to say, like, oh, I want to explore something, but I've never done it before, and then you find out you don't like it. You kind of feel like you may have wasted a little bit of time. So giving you a chance to jumpstart that process while you're still playing is beneficial for everybody.
Well, it seems like this is a principled approach because, as a young person, you're a 20-year-old who's in college, you have a lot of interests, you have some academic interests as well. To compare that to someone who eventually turns 30 and 40, your interests could vary quite a bit. But to know who you are and what your likes and dislikes are is fundamental, I believe.
Absolutely.
So tell me, coming from St. Louis, you're a Missouri guy just like me. And, tell me why the Gophers and not the Mizzou Tigers.
That's a funny story. Mizzou came to me first.
Yeah.
They were my first college offer, and eventually they stopped talking to me.
Okay.
So it's on them.
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure.
Minnesota came in strong. They pitched hard, and it coincidentally came at a time where I was debating between Iowa and Wisconsin, and both Iowa and Wisconsin said I was top on their list, and then pull a scholarship and say I don't have a scholarship, I had to walk on. And I was kind of pissed off about that, and found out Minnesota is a rival of theirs, and I'm like, all right,
there you go.
Say no more. I'm signing the dotted line, and let's move forward. So,
what can you appreciate about those years playing for the University of Minnesota Gophers?
Yeah, I mean, as any athlete, I feel like you miss those times where you're around your teammates and the brotherhood bonds that you have, or sisterhood bonds that you have. Like, that atmosphere is like no other. Like, I've been in many different careers, and I still don't feel like I have that community aspect where everybody is just fighting for everything and different backgrounds, and it doesn't require much for people to just come in and be authentic. And you just learn so much about each other, but you go through so much together.
Okay.
Like, I can appreciate so many of our times together as teammates, just going through two-a-days to, the season, to the grind, and going against, some big teams, and, playing in crazy environments. And like my freshman year when we go into the big house and we beat them and win the jug, like, I will forever remember that, and just the feeling that I felt around everybody else and how much we worked hard for that moment. Like, those are things that you never forget as an athlete, and you always try to seek that in your after journey as well. It's like, how do you keep that community aspect, thriving and alive once you are done?
Okay, and, it's been generations since I was in college and played the college game, but what is fundamental is that you learn a lot of your life skills as an athlete.
Absolutely.
You learn how to be persistent, how to overcome failure, how to, be resistant to negative criticism. I think one of the things that sports can give you is an identity, but can also give you an abundance of life development skills. But the problem is, I think, and you can concur, maybe, that life is a little different than football.
Absolutely.
But going through some of these life skills can help prepare you and give you some strategies to deal with life issues outside of football. Am I correct?
Oh, yes, 100%. I feel like, going through that atmosphere teaches you so much about the challenges and the ups and downs that life is going to give you. And because you are resilient, you're able to go through that. You're able to kind of build together as a team, and your leadership skills. Like, all the things that you learn in that is very applicable to life, especially in career. This is why a lot of employers love hiring athletes, because they know they have that drive, the determination, that autonomy, that self-discipline, all those different things. I think there's a struggle, though, sometimes that we as athletes don't know how to articulate that. How do we say, like, what did I learn in this atmosphere, how this applies to all these other atmospheres that are out here in life. Because we get into those situations and somebody asks us, like, who are you? And we will say, hey, I'm Steve, the football player. And what do you bring to the table? Like, well, I helped us win a championship. Versus, like, I helped lead a group of 100 people to accomplish something that we set early on in the year that was major accomplishment that's never happened before. Like, articulating that to somebody is going to be like, oh my God, we need you as part of our team because you're a leader, you know? And I'm trying to help people to understand how to talk about themselves in that way as well.
Good. So part of your strategy is really to give individuals tools that they can use when they go out and pursue their interests, I think. Okay. Well, Steve, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming again. Steve's new book, Soul of an Athlete, is going to be here available at Strive Bookstore, and certainly as part of his process in becoming a life coach for athletes at all levels. Thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate it.